Welcome to the Ethics Experts, where we're elevating ethics and compliance and HR to the strategic level it's supposed to be.
Hey, this is the Ethics Experts. If it's your first time with us, hey, how's it going? And if you're a returning subscriber, hey, bestie, hope you're having a great day. See what happens when you subscribe to the Ethics Experts. You get a bonus greeting on every single episode. So no brainer to hit that subscribe button to share with your friends and join this amazing community of people that are trying to change the world by working on our workplaces one at a time. I am here with my good friend, Dr. Hemma Lomax. She is a senior counsel in the integrity and compliance department at Snap of Snapchat fame. How's it going, Doctor?
I'm great. Nice to see you, Nick. I always feel so energized to spend time with you, so I'm looking forward to our chat.
Well, the feeling is absolutely mutual. We met through some mutual friends, and we kind of have become fast friends. We've done some webinars together. I've stolen a bunch of your talk tracks because they just resonate so deeply with me. You're somebody who I think, you know, we have like a very similar ethos. I think we both see the opportunity that businesses have to be a force for good in the world by first starting with making, you know, kindness a business model, kindness in our workplaces with each other. And, you know, so we're going to get into all that stuff today. And I'm super excited to finally get you on the Ethics Experts. So why don't we start, Hemma, with kind of your story? How did you come to be where you're at right now?
Oh, gosh, that's a big story, but thanks for asking the question. I will say before I do that, I use a lot of your talk tracks too. I'm always inspired by what you've got to say. So it's a bit of a chicken and egg there. But so yeah, I'm in a compliance function now. I'm a lawyer by profession. The long story short is I wanted to find a way to save the world when I was younger. I wanted to be Secretary General of the UN. And, you know, I looked at corporate responsibility at the end of a journey. I was first thinking about state responsibility and individual responsibility for big things like war and, you know, environmental disasters. And I came to realize along the journey that actually corporations, one, can have a massive impact. And two, to steal one of your talk tracks, you know, we spend a lot of time at work. And if you can have impact at work in the workplace and people can feel secure in the workplace, then they are positioned, much better positioned to do good at scale. So no surprise that I went through a variety of careers. I was a barrister in the UK, prosecuting, and then I went to work in government to start thinking about legislative drafting. Then I saw that the US was doing a lot when it came to corruption. So I came over here to work at the Securities and Exchange Commission to prosecute companies instead of individuals. And then as I was looking at, you know, companies in crisis, I realized that some companies that care and have big brands they care about can make a real difference. They can do more than the law might ask or require. And as much as I love being a lawyer, I think sometimes the law can get in the way and we look for the minimum compliance. And I'm interested in spending my efforts on what could be done when you've got the resources and the brand power to want to do something. So that's how I ended up at Disney and then Snap, looking for ways that big companies can make big impact.
So you're a very purpose-driven person. That's how that has always sort of shown through from like really the first time I met you and heard you speak. And it's very interesting. I always find it interesting where people like, you know, they have, you know, this very big romantic story, and it's sort of big and romantic because along the way, they've made those sort of tough decisions to pursue their heart or pursue this purpose that was bigger than, like, it was probably would have been easy to stay and make a lot of money in, you know, in England and be a barrister and all those other things. But you said, I saw, you know, what the US was doing about corruption, and I came over here. What was it you saw directly, and how did you, and like talk about that fork in the road where you said, you know what, I'm going to kind of hop the pond and I'm going to kind of pursue this dream over here?
I'm really looking for, I mean, you said this before, you know, dream big and people that can dream big, because otherwise we're limited, aren't we, by our imagination. Yeah. And if you set your sights too low and you think that things aren't possible, then you're going to be stuck in that. I think with great purpose, grand purpose comes grand frustration. And so rather than being stuck in frustration, I was looking for environments, conditions that allow big dreams to thrive. And so that's one, you know, compliment to the United States, but also the United States was much more advanced at the time in prosecuting and looking at corporate corruption, and having determined through, you know, Ph.D. and various things that was one area I could focus on at scale. I decided to come to the US and learn everything I could, thinking maybe I'd take it back to the UK, but, you know, things happen, you get married, you have kids, and see how very smart people were trying to move the needle on these big issues. So yeah, very purpose driven, also moved by frustration and looking for environments where you can try to do more than just, the average.
What were some of those frustrations that prompted you to start looking elsewhere?
Yeah,
what did you keep kind of hitting up against, and what was it, I guess, that you talked about you wanting to wanting to change the world and fight for a better world, and you pursued something over in your home country that obviously wasn't feeding you. So what were those things, those like points of slippage?
Yeah, and it's not unique to the home country. It's really unique to the the responsible actors, let's say. So as I mentioned, I was looking at how could I make a difference when it comes to responsibility for some of the most atrocious things. I mean, it sounds silly, but when I was young, the things I saw on the TV were mass transit accidents and war. I'm like, why are these things allowed to happen? And I did a bit of health and safety volunteering in my employment, but really I thought, gosh, who's responsible for these things I'm seeing on the television? And when I first started thinking about international criminal individual responsibility, and so entered the criminal justice system as a trial attorney, and the frustrations there were, gosh, before you even get to the actual innocence or guilt of the individual that might be put before the judge or jury, got systematic deficiencies that you start to think, gosh, is there any truth in the justice system? And so that was one issue. And then also, again, as I mentioned, you start seeing that some of these things are at scale. So I went all the way to looking at international criminal tribunals and what they were doing well, and truth and reconciliation commissions and corruption. But again, the solution seemed to lie where the power is and where the money is. And so I thought to myself, this is a girl that did not take corporate law at law school, never thought she'd enter a corporation, was just all doing human rights. I thought to myself, actually, go away where people say the problem is and see what you can do to learn first, of course, and then second, to see if you can help others make an impact. So that was really it wasn't really the country necessarily. I mean, as I say, there is a big mentality in the US that I was attracted to, in terms of there's no ceiling and there's no floor, let's put it that way.
Right.
But it was certainly more who was doing the work that I thought might be impactful. And at the time, the FCPA, the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act, was being enforced vigorously here in the US. And we just drafted a bribery act in the UK. So that was really the turning point for me.
You're somebody who is like, I don't know, your energy is so infectious. You have an optimism to you in spite of, these frustrations, as you put it. How have you kept yourself from getting jaded and not losing, sight or grasp of, this, what could be and what should be?
Mm-hmm. Well, gosh, that's kind of you to say. I feel like it's not that I haven't felt jaded, of course. The two things, as I said, they stack: purpose and frustration, optimism, pessimism, they stand. In fact, I'm probably more optimistic. I've driven to be optimistic because I see how bad things can be, right? So you have your cynical view, like, gosh, there's a fire here. And then you have to think, it drives you to think about the solutions to put that fire out. And so I think they do come hand in hand. And part of the drive is, frankly, outrage sometimes, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the worry that compassion fatigue can set in. And that's, I see compassion fatigue as a form of privilege. It's very easy for us to just be grateful for what we've got and close our eyes to the other people around us, and close our eyes to the community around us, close our eyes to the other stakeholders, and just focus on my income, the comfort for my kids and my family. And so that's a tension for sure. And I've had to make decisions. I've also been very fortunate because there are lots of people trying. And so what I wanted to do is put myself in communities of people that are trying, again, first to learn, to be inspired, and then to see if I can't work with those people to do something. The other thing I'm going to say that's really helped me, and this is a theme you'll hear from me, is we all have the privilege of impacting those around us in a positive way on a daily. And so the more I can help facilitate people to see that in themselves, so call it, if it's my superpower, I don't think it's super, I think everyone's got the power, right, to have a positive impact on them. And so actually, for me, impact at scale is all around us. And that's what keeps me excited, right? I'm not having to be Secretary General of the UN to do this. I don't have to work with the next Secretary General to do this. There are actually people on a daily basis, whether it's in your supermarket or in the C-suite, that if they have an approach of human first, kindness, and they understand their own unique power to make a difference. Gosh, what a world that would be, right? If everyone got it. I love it when you and Gio say, put your bat signal out and we'll be there, because you understand your power. That's why we're kindred folk.
That's right.
We're family. And the more people that weren't afraid to say that, the better we'll be, I think, that's what drives me. I'm quite excited. You can tell I'm very genuinely excited about the possibilities, not my own necessarily, but what I can see in others. And therefore, together, what can we create? That's my question. What can we do together?
So thanks for those kind words. I would, I think, so in my own experience, I'm a very optimistic person. And I think that, we kind of live in a world of pessimists, or people that, I think we're probably all optimists as kids, but the world kind of beats us down and it chews us up and it spits us out. And I think the refrain that I hear behind my back, frankly, from pessimists is that, like, well, you're just optimistic because you're very naive. And I think it's kind of the opposite of that. I think it's more of what you said. I think the most optimistic people, the ones are fighters, and they're the ones who see what could be possible and see what should be possible. And those are the people that are willing to, like, put in the effort to change the world into what we think that it could and should be. I mean, you're talking about impact at scale. Let me just say this. I think, like, people like us, and probably a lot of the people listening to this, we were put on this earth at a certain time for a certain reason. Like, a lot of the stuff you're talking about, and I'm talking about, like, 100 years ago, we would be selling pencils on the street. I'm saying, like, we wouldn't have a job because nobody wanted to hear about it. Now we're at a time where, like, the world is ready for a lot of what we're talking about. We've seen the old way that things, the way things were, and we don't want those kind of structures to overhang into our workplaces and into our world anymore. And if this is a function of, like, sort of our, like, technological privilege, then fine, we need to take advantage of it. If it's a function of the fact that, we don't have to, like, forage for food anymore, and we have the opportunity now to do these sort of, like, higher level things that are going to make our world better, then great. I'm not, like, bashful about that. But you said something that really resonated with me, that, you said, I wanted to surround myself in communities of people that were like-minded. And we were talking yesterday, we had, like, a little learning session about, like, the importance of surrounding yourself with people that are like-minded, and how sort of contagious bad attitudes are. Talk to me a little bit about how that, like, when you landed at Disney, or when you landed in one of these roles where you were really seeing, like, oh my gosh, my light bulb turned on, we can really drive a lot of, what did you say at the beginning, not just, like, sort of minimal legal compliance, but really trying to push beyond that into making an impact that was really felt. Tell me about how that experience was like what that first experience was like, where it was like a reinforcement of, like, okay, this is absolutely the right path I want to be on.
Right. I mean, whether it's, we can go on and on about the why, but whether it's because Disney and Snap care about their brand and that's very closely tied to their consumer base, or because there are people that genuinely care, they've got the will, the resources to think about that, right? They think about more than what's minimally legally compliant. I think there was a time when companies, as long as they were doing what was lawful, could just go after profit. Now, again, glass half full for me. You can say either way, but for me, we are in a moment in time where people are demanding more.
Right.
And we say it's Gen Z, we say it's millennials, but I think everyone's demanding more.
Agree.
And that's nice. That's a shift, isn't it? And so that, to me, is an opportunity. It's a moment in time where, if those values are aligning and people are now understanding the business case, then we can start focusing on the how. I will tell you that in the past, I spent a lot of time and energy trying to sell the business case for doing the right thing. DEI is a great example: diversity, inclusion, equity, and belonging. DIB. I've spent so many hours putting together PowerPoints of why it's helpful to the business. Yeah. And that's a frustration. I'm a bit tired of that. I like to be in a moment in time now where we all agree that it's helpful. Maybe we don't all agree, but certain people agree. Those in power agree. And now we can start focusing on how to achieve it, because, and we're seeing this, the statements that it's helpful, the statements that we're committed, of course, not enough. And to your point about next level, if you get to a place where everyone's like-minded about what we should be doing, then we can really brainstorm and collaborate on how to do it effectively. And, back to a point that you've made, I love to make about psychological safety. We want to be able to try. You could get it wrong. You won't please everyone. You might come across as naive to the people that matter, but you have to try. And I think that's what these big brands have been able to do. Companies where I don't have to fight on the business case. Now we just get to really enjoy experimenting on how to push the needle and do better. And it's a journey. I don't think there's never a status quo where we can all say, hey, we're great now.
Right.
And so because of that, that joy of always iterating, always growing together and bringing people along with you, I think that's what, I hope that answers your question. That's what
it does answer my
I'm
question.
finding today at Snap too. Yeah.
And that's like, that kind of turns into like a perpetual motion machine for good, right?
Exactly.
And you just said something interesting where like, we're never going to be there, or like, we're never like good now and we're good to go. And you know, what's interesting is sometimes you see these folks who are, like athletes, or they're like triathletes or something, and you look at them and they're like in great shape and they can run like a 5-minute mile or something crazy. And like, they're in a constant continuous improvement mode. They're never like, okay, good, let's get some like potato chips and beers and let's just like hang out. Like they're in a constant, you know, improvement mode. And from our distance, you know, we're like, what are you beating yourself up for? Well, they're beating themselves up because it's a mentality of like, we're striving for perfection, that while we're never going to reach it, it's going to be noble to pursue it. And so much of that translates into like the kindness movement or whatever you're kind of, you know, whatever we want to kind of call this thing, this new era that we're kind of stepping into, where we don't have to make the case. We don't have to burn a bunch of like useless calories trying to make the case why, you know, inclusion is like good, or why like culture is an important thing. I mean, I got to tell you this, in my old life, I've always been like a culture first kind of a person, because my family came over here and our culture was like a big differentiator for us, as we moved around a lot. And it just always made sense to me, like the way that a team works together is, while you can't quantify it, has a much bigger impact on whether that team is going to win a championship than how many practices they go to or what shoes they're wearing or something. You know what I'm saying? But I worked in a world where everything was all spreadsheets, and the valuations of companies was all based on, you know, the dollars and the time value of money and all that kind of stuff. And like, it was like almost a sort of like dealing with a bunch of naturalists who only believed in things that could be touched and like felt and put, if you couldn't put it into a spreadsheet, it didn't exist. And it was so backwards thinking to me that like this case for culture, I was trying to make it in my private equity days, and like it would just fall flat in many cases. And I don't know if it's because, you know, I've surrounded myself with other people, or we're entering this new era where now we can just kind of run forward and do those kind of right things, versus trying to just, you know, swim upstream, so to speak, to try to make this case for something that to me is like, and to me and probably to you is just like so obvious.
Right. And also the data can be, you know, manipulated. It can be so debatable. And really, you know, I read something recently about, it's not really about the data, it's the experience underlying the data. And so if you can bring that to the fore, the data will actually speak for itself. The data will come.
Right.
And, you know, going back to your point about half full, you know, pessimist, optimist, you have to see the conditions where atrocities are allowed to happen. Like, I'm using the word atrocity very purposely. I'm not just talking about wars. I'm talking about atrocities in terms of trauma in the workplace, or bullying at schools, you know, churches, whatever it might be. If you can see the negative conditions, then you can maybe consider what you should do to undo those conditions, right? So there is a balance in that. And I think it's really important to see the experience. Now, I think we've seen, again, no one wishes this upon anyone, but we've seen some really bad things happening, you know, in terms of the Me Too movement, Black Lives Matter with George Floyd. We've seen a lot of bad things come to the fore. Thankfully, social media is allowing it, you know, videos are allowing it to come to the fore. And what are we if we can't ask ourselves why this is happening? Actually, it reminds me of something, I think Matthew Friedman, he does a lot of work in Singapore on human trafficking, and his wife Sylvia, they said they went into a school and they talked about trafficking and the dangers of trafficking. And these little kids, about, I don't know, 8 or 9 years old, at the end of the talk said, and why are the adults letting this happen? It was just so powerful.
I got chills. You just gave me chills, right? With that. Yeah.
It gave me chills when I heard it, and I've never forgotten it. I mean, it was, you know, why are the adults letting it happen? And actually it reminds me of something else one of your other guests said, Catherine Manning, about Harry Potter and this generation that's seen Harry Potter, and they saw that the kids have to figure it out. And that's, you know, those two things are kind of tragic for us adults in the room. And I like the idea, again, tragedy inspires me to optimism, right? So I get moved by these things, and I ask myself that same question. And that's a fair question. Why is this allowed to happen? Why are the kids the ones having to fix this? And then to your point, like we talked about being at this level and being able to do more. Again, I'm going to say that again. We are at the limits of our imagination. The athlete is at the limits of their imagination if they just say, I'm good. The medal says I'm good, right? But I think the athlete with the growth mindset says, I don't know what else could be achieved if I don't allow myself to think there's more. And when I say more, I mean more in terms of more doing the right thing, more humanity, more kindness, more compassion. We're very limited sometimes by our sense of what's right, hierarchical respect of the leader, law, you know, again, Catherine talked a lot about that, how I'm a lawyer, us damn lawyers we can trump kindness, we can trump your first instincts to compassion. Right. We'll say, don't admit it, don't, you know,
right.
Don't ever say you're wrong, don't give too much information. And sometimes, while well-intentioned, those limits we put on ourselves block us completely from ever imagining a better, let me be lofty, a better world or a better workplace, like you would say. So yeah.
That's a great point.
To say there, but
no, I think that's a massive point. That, you know, we truly are, like, if you think you can or you think you can't, you're absolutely right. And so many of the prisons that we're trapped in are ones of our own making, because we can't imagine something different. And what I found is that a lot of folks, I mean, it's exactly what I was kind of alluding to earlier, like about being jaded, and like that's, you know, I have my daughter's about to be 4, and she's like right at the apex of not being a little kid anymore, but she still has that like amazing spark where she's just, I don't know, the world is magic for her, you know, and it's a magical place, and it's like super exciting, and she's super excited about everything all the time. Like, she hasn't had any of those bullying experiences or those negative experiences, and like where that light starts to dim. And I think if we've all started from that, then, and we all don't still have that, well, something has changed there. And I think it's not that we've realized that we were, you know, I think it's more like we're scared to turn it on. We're scared to be disappointed or something. You know what I'm saying?
And you know what? I'm going to go back to superpowers. We're scared to turn it on. We're designed to be scared to turn it on. I mean, Kent Clark had to be Kent Clark. He couldn't be Superman, right? like if ever there's a superpower movie, there's always a government agency coming to shut it down. Right? We're conditioned to hide our power. And it's funny, I know you and I are such kindred spirits as well, because we've both got little kids, right? I've got a 4-year-old and a 7-year-old. And like, yeah, you're right. I could think of times when she said to me, do you believe in magic, Mum? Because I don't want to tell you this. I don't think you're going to enjoy it if you don't believe in it. You know, those sorts of questions. She also asked me the other day, and I know you'll laugh at this, but it was meaningful to me. Why do I have to do just what you tell me? And the question, you know, all sorts of alarm bells for a parent.
Right.
You know, it did make me think for months after. I'm like, gosh, you know, I don't want her to go into the workplace and think, or any place actually, and think because someone above her has told her she must do it without having some independent thought and being able to speak up when actually she doesn't believe in it from a values perspective. So, you know, I'm sure you do too. We struggle with this. Again, I want to keep my children safe. I want to make them respectful. I also don't want to crush the spirit that I talk about in my adult life. So, yeah, it's a great mirror. I'm glad you brought yours also. I have the same experiences with mine.
Well, and also I mean, I think we have kids for a reason, right? They teach us so much about ourselves, and like you just call them a mirror. They're absolutely a mirror. And I mean, I've had so many of those experiences myself where I'm like, I want my kids to speak up. I want them to have a voice. And then sometimes they come and like tell on each other. And I'm like, stop being a tattletale or something. It's like, well,
I know.
I'm like, I'm the problem. I'm part of the problem.
I love your vulnerability when you say that. You're always so good at that. And I want to emulate you on that, because we're, you know, it's insecurity that gets us in trouble, right? Totally. And we do pass down some messages that we've heard when we're lazy. I mean, lazy, not to criticize us, but to say that we're insecure. Yeah. Like I said, my crappy answer to my daughter was, because I'm your mum and I said so. Like, it was terrible.
Yeah, because I'm the boss. I mean, that's that answer. I didn't
feel equipped to have the conversation, so I was lazy about it, and I will have to revisit now, because you know, when I was reflective, thank God I had the time to be reflective about it and do something. But yeah, I think that's actually also another superpower I think you've got. I try to emulate, is recognizing our own flaws and then modeling that, right? Because there's comfort in understanding that we're not perfect, but we're willing to grow. The other thing I worry about that you've reminded me is when we pass on those messages. So I'm not going to presume that someone said that to you once, but maybe. And I see that a lot in the corporate culture too, where it's, you know, messages are passed down. Well, can we back to the business case, can we put values over profit? Like, it's very uncomfortable, that sentence. Right. You know, how will the business see you if you hammer on about values? That's another valid question that comes up. And I think we need to think very carefully about, you know, have you got executive presence is another one I hear a lot, you know, and what does that mean? And we pass down the lessons we've learned through our own pain. Think like, this is how you fit in, this is how you assimilate, this is how you're like.
That's interesting. That's an interesting point that you're making here. Yeah.
And I worry about that because that's how I, get back to my day job. That's how I think compliance errors or fraud or corruption happens, right? Because people feel compelled. There's a tension between what they're being asked to do and how they're being asked to behave and how it's possible for them to do it. So we sometimes pass on messages. As compliance professional, we're trying to reverse that message and say, no, values first.
Right.
We don't want a dollar that's earned the wrong way. We'll help you figure out what that is. That's our message, because otherwise the other, which is in a downturn, we need to make money, that can be really, difficult. So anyway, again, I'm blabbering on, but
no, you're not blabbering on. I think you made like 3 or 4 massive points that I just don't know which is the best one to dive into. I mean, the one that's really resonating with me right now is the point that, this executive presence thing. Let's kind of talk about that a little bit and how, I guess, what does executive presence mean and how is that not a facade? And how does that facade conflict with the potential that, authenticity can generate in terms of human connection and true persuasion? And, I'll tag on, like, do people really want authenticity or do they just want like well-curated authenticity? Like, where's that line? You know what I mean?
Yes. Oh, such a good question. And I'm not even going to begin to talk about the DEI part of the question about executive presence. That's a big one.
It is a big one.
I'm going to stay where we are when it comes to how people need a space to be authentic, belong, have a culture of speaking up and not being told how to speak and how to show up. I think we have an obligation as individuals to choose how we want to show up. And then that, again, your children choose how they want to show up. And then that's framed by lots of messages. And some of the most well-intentioned messages to how you can succeed in this company, this culture, is to behave in a certain way. And a lot of that, what worries me is that's more of the be Clark Kent, don't be Superman, right? Don't threaten others in the room with your viewpoint. Look, we all want to make space for everyone's viewpoint, but sometimes some people's views matter more. Or if there's limited time in a meeting, you're going to be different. And so those are the tensions I'm talking about. The things that we're teaching aren't binary. Like you can have respect, but also be empowered to have a voice. It's not have respect for those above you and don't speak up. That's how we have war crimes. That's how soldiers do horrible things in the names of their leaders. And so there needs to be some, look, again, I've got an idea and then we have to think about the how, but there needs to be some balancing of that where people feel empowered to speak up, talk and co-collaborate on what the problem is and how it's presenting and what the issue is. And if part of your executive presence is not threatening others in the room, could be a bit the way you dress, but I'm talking about what you say and your viewpoints and your ability to challenge the status quo, then you might dim that light. You might think your job is to not do that. And so again, it's no surprise that I'm attracted to cultures which don't try to dim your light, which ask you to show up authentically, that make you feel like you belong because they want to hear your voice from all levels. I mean, a good story, it's not a compliance story, is the janitor at Frito-Lay's that came up with the spicy chip. Like someone had to listen to that janitor, who's now a VP, I believe. He had an idea. He felt comfortable going into an office where others would say he didn't belong until after hours, but he went into an office and had an idea and he shared it. He said, you're doing this wrong for this community. How about you add some chili pepper to your chips? My favorite, so I say it. But again, that company allowed for that interaction. And so now bring that at scale. What if I see something that's going wrong when it comes to fraud or a practice that might lead to corruption or behaviors which are toxic? And I might not be the victim. I might not want to run a complaint, but I want to flag it for us to focus on. Oh, maybe you're not a team player. Maybe it's just you. Those messages can really silence the speaking up that I think is critical to psychological safety. And therefore this, back to the optimism, this collaborative brainstorming of how to do better. You can't have that if you've got this context of don't be seen and not heard. Don't speak up. Know your place.
Right.
I've seen that a lot. And
I've seen that a lot too. And, I like that you tied that back to the psychological safety discussion, because like, there's so much like contagion and it's going to go one way or the other. There's no like kind of middle ground with it. And maybe there is, maybe I'm wrong, but it feels like if somebody tries to speak up and they're stamped down, it's not just that person's light that dims. It's everybody around them who sees it,
Right.
their light gets dimmed as well. You know what I'm
Oh
saying?
yeah, you're
crazy.
you're the one they put into the volcano first, and then
Yeah,
everyone
right.
sees what happens. They're like,
That's
okay,
right.
we're the smart ones. We've learned our lessons. I hear myself saying it to myself. I mean, it's really critical. And again, I love that you brought up the modeling piece, because that's it. It's not just the one or two whistleblowers that are either reckless or brave, whichever it is, to try.
Right.
It's the message it sends to everyone else about the futility of trying. And worse, the retaliation you may get if you try. So, speaking up is fraught. We've got statistics all over the place that say there's still 70% or so of retaliation being reported going on in companies. So got a long way to go there. And it really is the death of all innovation. Right?
It is.
Like,
100%
you're not
it
recognizing forget respect now or kindness. You're just not recognizing the strength of the people around you, the strengths that you're not leveraging, number one. The eyes and ears that you're not leveraging, number
Totally.
two. The fact that being heard and having a voice leads to kindness and belonging, again, great, we're there, but it's next level. I mean, just recognizing it as a gift. So one of the things I was attracted to was this organization that Georgetown and Shepard Mullin have put together called Active Bystandership for Law Enforcement. So again, horror of the George Floyd experience and everything that went before George Floyd and still continues to happen today. I'm like, who's doing something? Again, my first instinct is like outrage, and then who's doing something? And I read an article about this organization. It's called Active Bystandership for Law Enforcement. And what they do is they redefine loyalty as speaking up. Again, easy to say, Nick, easy to say. But, we talk about, if you imagine that environment, 4 people are in jail now, 4 officers are in jail. Thankfully, what you're thinking about there is snitching was a problem. Speaking up was a problem. Hierarchy was a problem. Like that's the root of that being allowed to happen. No one was able to just knock the knee off the neck.
Right.
So sorry to be literal, but that's exactly what was needed. And a few weeks later, we had a video of an officer knocking a knee off the neck. I mean, it is possible. And for all the people holding the cameras in the public, the person most empowered to do that is the person that's in uniform right next to them, was the idea. Yeah. So this program is born about that. But the only reason I mention it is because of this thing about, I really love this redefining loyalty. Like, I'm saving you, your conscience, your reputation, your career, if I step up and speak up. I might save your life in those high energy situations. So what about speaking up in the corporate? Maybe we're not talking about life or death now. Sometimes we are, right? Like, workplace trauma can really lead people to think about their choices. And I've seen that again. And I thought to myself, gosh, if only we could care, if the company could care enough to have the individuals that make the company care enough to look out for each other, that's not really going to get in the way of the bottom line. So what are we doing?
How could it?
Right? Well, maybe it's employment lawyers. I don't know. Maybe it's litigation lawyers that think it is. But the point of the law is to have the point of the law is to have an employment environment where you're safe.
Right.
Why don't we focus on the substance of the law rather than the threat of the law? Question.
Yeah, and I think many times it's about physical safety, but the psychological safety, I think, has much sort of like farther reaching, like, tentacles, so to speak, or the lack thereof, right? Has much farther reaching tentacles, not just into the individual, how they feel, how they think, all that stuff, but like, there's not this like magical barrier between our workplaces and our communities, or our workplaces and our homes, right? And I think the pandemic has shown us that if it wasn't clear before, it should be clear to everybody, big time right now. But like, that workplace trauma, you think people don't bring that home with them? I mean, I have to, like, I do this sometimes, I have a bad day at work and I find myself being like edgy with my kids. And it's like, this is insane. Like, they had nothing to do with that thing. You know what I'm saying? The point is, like, we're not automatons. I can't just like flip that off. So like, there's always this bleed over, and it gets back to what we're talking about.
Right.
If our workplaces can be places of true safety, places where people can bring their whole selves to work, places where people can speak up and show their loyalty to the mission that they signed up for, the values that they believed, the values on the mission and values page that they believed when they signed their offer letter. I mean, there's just so many like knock-on effects, not just from the bottom line, which I'll get to in a second, but like to our communities, to our households, to the lives that our children are subject to, because I mean, it's just all one life. You know what I'm saying? It's all just one thing.
Yeah, never a true word spoken. And we see that because we're all. I'm assuming, again, look at the news. We're concerned about safety at work and safety at home and safety in our streets, because that trauma, doesn't. It's not something. I think, again, Catherine might have said this. It's not a jacket you take off, right?
Right.
And I think I've also heard, there's the question of do no harm. And then there's the question of what else other good you can do. And you heard me start with, I wanted to be in environments where people could do more than the law requires. Right. Of course, there's a lot of work to do just to get us up to what the law requires, right? And those traumas, that safety, that health and safety at work writ large when it comes to mental health as well, is really important. And again, if you can tackle that, you actually have, I don't know, unlimited benefits when it comes to the innovation and a company that's sustainable and thrive. It's funny, I'm reading a book right now called Love as a Business Strategy
Cool.
by Mohammed Anwar. I'll send it to you so you can put it on your book list, because I know you're doing reading challenges. You know, at Snap, we have kindness as a business strategy. Kindness in my mind is another synonym for love. But one of the things that the book talks about is a company that had, I think, a self-described very toxic layoff at some point. And the CEO was, he didn't understand. It's funny, he went to a game. You talked about a game. He went to a football game a week or two after, and he saw a game come back for like last quarter. His team was not going to win, and then they came back from it miraculously. And he thought to himself, gosh, maybe the company can make a comeback from where we just went. And then he heard the coach speaking about what distinguishes this team. And he said, well, they love each other. They've got love for each other. And so this Mohammed Anwar, the CEO, thought to himself, gosh, those two things together, right? We can come back if I rethink my approach to my company. And the key to that is building a culture of love for my team. Gosh, how powerful. What great insights from a football match. But then went ahead and strategized to implement that at scale.
Well, it's such a powerful, I mean, look, I could just like talk about this all day. Like,
I know.
We're all built for it. We're all built with it. And like, it's been like sucked out of us in the business world for some reason. And it doesn't make any sense. Like if you think about kind of how we got to where we're at, kind of go back to the Industrial Revolution, there were all of these machines that came out, right? And so the factors of production were the big assets were these machines. And so sort of repeatable processes were like the basis for all the wealth creation over the last 150 years or something, right? So if that's the name of the game, human interaction in that context was really to try to like mechanize people, right? And like that's what those bureaucratic structures came from. That's like pulling the individuality. It's like, dude, just pull this lever all day, pull the lever on time so that this machine can work, because that's really where it is. And so in doing that, it's like suck the humanity out of us. And that's been like an implication. It's been like a bottom line sort of foundational, almost like below the surface, implication across MBA schools and case studies and everything in, our business law classes and our law schools and all these other things have been sort of built upon this sort of like dehumanized foundation that, our entire economies have been built upon. And I think there's this new change coming because we're not in an industrial economy anymore. We're in a knowledge work economy. We are our work. The humanization of us is like kind of re-emerging, and it's in conflict with these structures. And we're seeing it show up in all these different areas. It's showing up in our hierarchies. It's showing up in our, the lack of DE&I, the ceilings that some people hit and that other people hit, right? Like there's all these different areas. And I think what you're talking about, like the reason that that's like a novel title, Love as a Business Strategy, is because it's not around. Like people don't say love at work.
I've got it right here. No one's going to pick it up because of the word love. No, I know. Hopefully they will, but
But they think it's so like in conflict with the bottom line. And it's just kind of bizarre because so kind of the economics of this, like the econ 101 of this is like our organizations are used to a really low level of employee engagement. That's the key of it. So then they're like, well, how can we bring love in? Then people are going to be flaky. It's like, there is like a flat tire that all of our businesses are running on, and we're used to running on those flat tires.
We don't trust putting air in it. We don't trust it. We're worried about what happens if you put too much air in it.
And it gets back to that point you were making about, insecurity and fear being the basis of all of this stuff.
One word. I will say this over and over again. I will evangelize. Insecurity is the root of all evil and everything that comes before evil. And that's what it is. It's just, gosh, so much that you said that's so insightful. And I feel like bringing the humanity back, that's why I say companies that care is why I'm trying to say it, right? Bringing the humanity back is going to be critical. Also, I'm going to say this. humans are stronger than systems, right?
Right.
So again, here's another bit of optimism. I may be called naive, but humans are stronger than systems. You know why? Humans built systems. Humans can dismantle systems in a minute. You just have to get a collective working collaboratively to do it. Alison Taylor talks about, she's a consultant called Ethical Systems, right? So I love her work. And again, humans are stronger than systems. What can we do? Very, very powerful. Maybe the insecurity is people don't want the power of the people being leveraged. I don't know. I don't want to get too philosophical here. But at the end of the day, let's start with ourselves, right? At least in your own environment, in your own community, even if it's just between you and your daughters, right? Or you and your neighbor, or you and your micro team, you can make a big difference. And that you don't even have to see the benefits of that. You will see it, but you don't have to know how much that's impacted others. I mean, you give people that humanity, that dignity, that respect, that is infectious. Talk about being infectious. Right. And you might not see it, but there are other people that would be saved in their environment because you were able to treat them that way. That's all I need to know.
Well, there's this universal law of reaping and sowing, and some people call it karma, but I think the reaping and sowing is a little bit of a better analogy for it, because I think, the way a lot of people will talk about karma is you do something good, something good's going to come back to you. You do something bad, something bad's going to come back to you. But with reaping and sowing, it's really like you plant a little seed and you get a massive harvest, because there's a multiplier effect in that reaping and sowing. So to your point, you just have to trust that these seeds that you're sowing, the harvest is going to come. It just is.
Right. And, do no harm and do more than no harm. Sorry, I interrupted you.
No. You're right.
Yeah. My friend Renee Rajkumar, she has Portal Coaching. She says, the true quality of a strong, effective leader is consistently managing with love and leaving people in a better state. Those are the seeds. If you have that intention and that's what you do every day, you don't need to see it. You don't need, it's not going to be some big thank you at the end of the day. You get to live with yourself. And I'm going to say that because that's what I think karma is, right? For me, even as a kid, I used to say, my deepest, darkest prison is my own conscience, right? Whether mum finds out what I did or the teacher finds out what I did, I've got to live with myself. And that goes both ways. Right? I've got to live with myself if I'm not doing the right thing and I left somebody in a worse state. I've got to live with myself. Again, what I say that's negative, I hear first, right? The corollary is if I do good, and again, it's not binary. If I'm intentionally trying in my growth trajectory to do good wherever I land, then I get to live with myself.
Right.
I get to look back on my life and think I tried as much as I could to do the right thing.
You just summed up this dynamic really well. When I first got into this business, I was like, I had this really grandiose idea. I wanted this to be a great place for people to work. I wanted everyone to feel, I wanted to leave everyone better, kind of what you were talking about. And I got burned by a couple of people. And I remember I had this kind of, this moment where I was like, is this even freaking worth it? Is this worth it? Because I'm just getting like stabbed in the back. I'm being dramatic, of course, but is it even worth it? And then, me and my brother were talking and we kind of came to the conclusion, to your point, that it's like, we're not doing this for them. I'm not sowing these seeds so that each seed grows into a crop. Each seed grows into a crop. I'm doing it because this is the type of person I want to be. This is the type of organization I want to build. This is the type of world I want to try to push us toward, in my little corner of it. And that's such it's such a freeing place to be, because then I'm not caught up in that ongoing balance sheet thinking of well, did I give out too much and not get enough back? It's I can have a much longer timeline and I can sleep at night and I can look myself in the eye and know I'm not screwing people over. I'm trying my best and I'm not perfect, obviously, but none of us are, but I'm trying to do that. And I don't really care about where the chips fall because I trust the sort of this law of reaping and sowing, or this, karmatic law, or whatever the word would be,
Yeah, you've got to trust. I mean, look, you said it. You just said it a second. You're not perfect. We can be humble enough and vulnerable enough to know that sometimes our good intentions can have bad impacts and learn from that. It's not that we don't care. It's that we don't need the reward of, it's not reap reward, right? So reward, put it that way. So I think, you've hit it on the nail. If you can live with yourself, it's more sustainable. And I could almost say love is selfish then, right? This is another philosophy. If you could just love yourself and do right by you, part of that is doing right by your conscience. And I'm not even being religious here or even spiritual, just very simple. If you can live with your choices, and if everyone had that same attitude, right? Because they're thinking about their impact on others as well as themselves, you're doing, I don't know, I hypothesize that we'll be doing better. Not perfect, but better.
Yeah, it would be better. Well, it kind of gets back to that point you just made about like the root of it all, the root of all the evil is this insecurity.
Yeah.
And I think there's this insecurity that leads us to this balance sheet thinking of like making sure I'm not giving too much, because if I'm giving more than I'm getting, then I'm a fool.
It's a problem.
And all of that thing, like that whole path is such like a
problem.
self-destructive path, you know?
It is where the alternative, and I'm going to go back to the word power. If you can recognize your power, God-given or not, right? You recognize your power to make choices, and one of those choices could be good, right?
Right.
Like, look, we all have the power. I mean, even the power to limit yourself, that's your choice. That's your power. You've decided to make yourself really small. Like in the end, that's a choice. As you know,
that's right. That's a great point, by the way.
I'm not trying to underplay all the influences that make you make that choice, including starting with myself and what I said to my daughter, right? Like starts with the mother and the father.
Yeah.
But it ends up, if we can recognize, have the security and the confidence to recognize it's a choice, and again, have some bad choices made for you to be propelled into wanting to do better next time. Right? That's the interesting thing about these stories, is the people that are doing big things, if you look at their stories, they've made some bad choices, they've learned from them, right? They've had some traumas and they've decided to recover or do better or help others. I mean, again, I'm the other organization that I'm involved with is Freedom Seal. Rani Hong is the CEO. She's a child survivor of trafficking.
Wow.
I can't even, she's told the story, but I can't even imagine what she's had to go through at 8 years old. And I've got, it kills me because my daughter's 7. But this lady has got 3 NGOs, 3 organizations, I should say, helping others in that place. So where did that come from? Partly because she sadly had to experience it and then chose what she would do with that. Not everyone's capable of doing what Riley's done, but we're all capable of something. And it's our choice. That's my question. What are you capable of?
Well, yeah. And I mean, it might even start with kind of going back to your other point of like, what are you going to settle for? Like, what prison are you going to, how we're all going to build some kind of a prison around ourselves because we all have like limiting thoughts, but we can kind of make that like a little coffin, or we can make that a palatial prison. Okay. Like we control like how big those walls are. And I mean, maybe theoretically we can knock those down at some level.
You said you felt free when you made a choice to go by your instincts of being a good leader and not be, deflated by the experiences that felt backstabbing. And that's what it is. It is freedom. Once you stop blaming other people,
right?
And there's plenty of blame to go around. It's not you can't not acknowledge that there are some awful things happening and people are impacting them. But if you get the opportunity to stop that and think to yourself, now, what choices do I have? In the environment? What choices do I have? Micro choices make a difference.
They do. Yeah. These micro choices make a difference. And those micro choices are the little tiles that end up making the mosaic of your life, or making the mosaic of the employee experience that you're a part of. And, I think so many folks end up getting, I think, well, I can't really make a difference because I don't have that title. I mean, I've seen this so many times. I'm sure you have as well. Like, they think that once they get the title or this promotion, then there's this like magic like dust of power that sprinkles over them, that now they can start making a difference. And it's like, if you haven't been making a difference already, then a title change, a little couple of extra text, a little different text on your email address is not going to have any difference, around you. And I've seen so many people have tons of actual power, but sort of no like positional power. And I've seen the opposite as well, where someone's pounding on the table and saying, I'm the CEO or I'm the boss and you should listen to me. It's like, well, we're not in like the Russian gulag. Like nobody has to do anything. You know what I'm saying? Yeah,
it's funny. You reminded me of something. I'm a bit irreverent, as you can probably tell. Not irreverent. I was taught correctly.
Yeah,
sit in, blah blah blah. I'm respectful. But I remember putting a poster on my wall at one of my places that I worked at. And I won't say which one because it's funny, but I wrote, "Nothing in this building is above my pay grade."
I love that.
Put it outside my door. Why? Not because I was saying I needed to do anything, but trying to encourage others that the problems they were seeing, and then saying, "Oh, it's above my pay grade." Like,
right.
Got nothing to do with your pay grade, right? This is about value. And so just trying to encourage people, even though I forgot about it, just making them realize that positional power can be irrelevant when values are at stake, right? And actually, I would like to say the opposite. Your personal power to impact what's before you is highly relevant wherever you go. And yes, you'll find the politically correct way to do it. We can't all blow through a job. I get that. It's not simple, but if you believe that, then you will do the next level work, again, I'm going to say again, of figuring out how best to do it, how to deal with the people that say you're naive, how to deal with the people that say know your place. You will find ways, and I will tell you, my favorite way right now is coaching and collaborative co-creation, right?
So let's dive into that, because there's so much power in that, and you don't have to have like a coaching license to start driving that kind of a change. So tell us about this passion.
Yeah, and look, on that point, I benefit hugely from coaching myself. I have a number of coaches, so I don't want to minimize what the professional coaches do. That said, I've learned from them, right? There's some basic principles, which is listen, be curious, radically curious, I like to say, facilitate decision making instead of making it for them. Again, I think you and I are very similar. I heard you say in one of your podcasts that we like to solve, we like to give answers when people share problems, and you talked about how you can be an active listener. But those skills, I mean, the listening is, old hat. It's hard to do, but old hat. But what's really, I think, interesting is empowering the person to come up with a solution themselves and therefore own it.
Right.
I can tell you to go see X, or you could figure it out yourself with some coaching questions, and then all of a sudden we've already got the buy-in. Buy-in's a good term for corporations, right? Oftentimes compliance functions are trying to get buy-in from the business, but why not have the business co-create with you, and then the 2/3 of the buy-in's done because it was their idea.
Great idea.
With your help, right? So that to me is super powerful in my day job, super powerful in terms of empathy and humanity and belonging, inclusions. You're actually having people work with it. And at Disney, again, how do you do it at scale? I thought to myself, I went to a coach and asked, I love coaching, should I become a coach? And they said, you'll never make enough money being a coach, Hemma, unless you're Brene Brown or Tony Robbins. I'm like, okay, challenge accepted. For another day, we'll talk about that. But what I decided to do at Disney is trial peer coaching. So peer coaching is having a few people in the room and using the coaching model, there's another word for it, but the coaching model, which is, everyone has a chance to be coached on what they want to be coached on, but they can also peer coach each other as well.
Cool.
So coaching at scale, where you don't need to be a professional coach to be able to ask coaching questions, involve people, be collaborative, think about co-creative design. Again, insecurity, ego. I want to own and get the credit for coming up with this answer. No, I don't need to do that. I need to prove that I know the answer. No, that's not necessary. What you need to do, if I may, being a bit righteous, is involve other people and make them feel and heard and valued. 100%. And if you use the coaching model, especially the peer coaching model at that, where it's a massive leveler. I opened the program to anyone at Disney that wanted to join. I did not ask about titles or day jobs or years of experience. But all of a sudden, someone came with their dilemma of the day. Everybody had a voice. Everyone could be helpful. And the only rule was they weren't allowed to give advice.
Amazing.
The coaching had to be questions. It was like a strict rule. That's cannot give advice. You can't say, Nick, you should do this. It would be, I wonder if Nick's considered the impact of blah, right? Like there would be very good instructive coaching questions that allowed the listener, the coachee, to decide what's best for them, being the owner of the issue, the owner of most of the information, the person responsible for implementing as the coaching session finished. And it was super powerful. So now I'm trying to use that in my compliance practice for our businesses.
Well, it's so applicable to everything. Right? Like that could be just on your team, team. It can be on a project. It can be, utilized in trying to push an agenda forward or trying to push a project forward across different business units. That model of involving people, questions first, sort of that coaching energy brings people in. And especially if you're kind of carrying what you're talking about forward of, making it their idea.
Making sure, not just it's easy to say, isn't it? Oh, it would be great if people felt like it was their idea. Nope. It would be great if I was actually curious as to what their ideas are. Very different.
Yeah, right.
Very different. I'm not trying to be clever and say, I'll plant my ideas.
No, this is not Inception.
Not tricking them. Yeah. Right. Yeah. I'm not tricking them. I'm saying, are you genuinely curious? Can you put your views aside, even though you're very smart, Hemma, and you think, and you're a compliance professional? Could there be a better way to control for this risk that I have no idea about? And the answer, if you think about it, is obvious, right? That they're the business they're the business owners, they own the opportunities, they own the risks.
Right.
Chances are they're going to know what works. So instead of me imposing a control that 4 or 5 years down the line, I'll have tested and think, oh, this doesn't work very well, and then I'll do another one. Why don't I just start with the people that have to implement the control and ask them what they think on a continuous basis, and then have that inform my practices? That
empathy plus like genuine curiosity is like such an antidote an antidote for the insecurity that is at the root of any of these divisions where you're like trying to pull a mule up the mountain. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Engaging them and saying, I mean, there's a respect in there. I mean, there's so much power to unleash. And again, it gets just, this has been such a fun conversation because we just kind of keep circling back to the same thing. It's just like a kindness. It's just a kind of a breaking down of these old structures. And yeah, I mean, so many people on my team. I mean, I've seen this so many different times, right? Where, they have the good ideas. They have them. How would I know what to do? They're in the foxhole. They know how that all works better than I do.
Can I just say, your team, my goodness, I've met a number of your teams. First, you're doing a wonderful job giving them the environment. Number two, what they came out with, that 7, I forget what it's called, the Evil Compliance Program, 7 something. Oh my goodness. Again,
Isn't so funny? It's so funny.
Powerful. And I was able to ask, like, this must be the marketing comms team. This must be Gio. No, I got to find out who it was. I got to learn who it was that was given the space to come up with that and make it reality. And so
it was so funny.
What was it called?
The 7 elements of an evil compliance program.
Must read for your listeners if they haven't seen it.
It was so funny. They showed it to me and I was dying. I was just dying laughing. It was the voice of it was so funny. But again, thank God we've been able to create the type of place where, I mean, we had this dream, and again, we're not doing it totally right and all that stuff yet, but it's like the first little sprouts coming up from the soil. You know what I'm saying? It's like,
but this is what I meant when I said the data. It's not the data, it's the behaviors and the experience underlying the data.
Right.
Like, you're going to get some good stats about how many people opened that.
Yeah.
But the only reason you're going to get that is because you created a space for it to be, that's the limits of their imagination being pushed a bit more. And you're not the first team to be thinking about compliance. You're not the first team to know about the hallmarks, but you are the first team to come up with that. And that tells you something. That's pushing the needle.
Well, and it goes back to what you're saying, right? Like, if people can bring their whole selves to work, and they can have the psychological safety to try something that's crazy or try something that's zany, or they can raise their hand and knock on the door of the and say, hey, we need to do some spicy chips, right? Regardless of whether they're a janitor or they're on the product team or whatever. There's so much collaboration. There's so much magic that can be unleashed. It's really the root of this vision that we have for the future. Because I can tell you what, I feel way more energized when I feel valued, and I feel way more energized and excited about coming to work when I feel like I can be myself and I can put my gifts to work and I can be in my Q zone and really do that thing that I was kind of built to do. And I was on an interview, or we had an interview today, and the last question was, the last question the candidate asked, or we said, what questions do you have? And everybody asks, well, tell me about the culture. Tell me about the culture. And I never want to answer that question, especially when it's a few of us, because I don't know, what am I going to say? I'm going to give you the picture of what I want it to be. And I don't know if that's how people actually experience it. But I mean, to hear how a couple of people talked about it, it was such a reinforcement to me to okay, we're on the right track. We have to keep doing this. The insecurities of myself, I have to continue to burn those away. We have to keep empowering people, because I can't be the hub of everything. Right. There's too much going on. I think you this is a word that I definitely stole from you, or a term, risk management at scale. You have to turn those ears and eyes on in the organization, because you can't block all those shots. You have to turn those on. So how can you actually do it at scale? How can you actually put your trust in, these other people? Well, you can trust that they're wired like you are, and they have eyes and ears. And if you can actualize them, then you're just going to reap those benefits. You just are.
Right. And it's funny because people say, oh gosh, it takes time, it's not going to happen overnight. Sometimes it happens overnight.
I don't think that's true.
It's magical. If you're brave enough to just try this stuff that you're doing at scale for a compliance sign for your team, you can see the benefits overnight. 100%. Transformational healing of past trauma, because someone finally feels heard and seen involved. And go on. And the ongoing effect of that is unlimited.
It's absolutely unlimited. And the same thing that happens when we stamp out everybody's light, when somebody speaks up and they get stamped down and they get the retaliation, it goes the other way. And, this is the thing that I get so excited about. I have chills talking about this. The thing that I get so excited about is that we all already want it. We all already want kindness.
Business case done.
Exactly. It's done. Everybody already wants it. But I if I had $1 for every time I've heard, well, it takes a long time to change culture,
One
like
for
as if it's
yourself,
this
one
like
for your
I'd have
yeah.
millions of dollars. I'm not kidding, because
We've
everybody
had a
thinks
long
it's
time. What have we been doing in this long time? We've had a long time with these problems.
that's right. You know what? It takes a little bit of intentionality. It takes a little bit of like effort, but it doesn't take 10 years. We're not turning a battleship. We're really lighting a match, or we're lighting a fire. You know what I'm saying? And it can take hold very, very, very quickly, to your point, because we're all already wired for love. We're all already wired for kindness. We just have to turn it on. That's it.
Yes. Thank you for that. I agree with it wholeheartedly.
Yeah.
I'm glad I'm not the only crazy person. If it's just you and me, that's
Me
fine.
and you, that's fine. We'd be in a ship of fools. That's fine.
Yeah.
So Hemma, I think we're probably over time. Oh my gosh. Okay. So we need to wrap up. I could talk to you all day. This was like one of my favorite episodes ever, I think. Where can people find you and get in contact with you? And yeah.
I'm on LinkedIn. Don't hesitate to look for me. Hemma R. Lomax on LinkedIn. I'll find you any day.
All right. Well, we got to do something together again soon. I will let you go. Let everybody go. Until next time. See you later.